Thank you, buddy. Hey, one of the topic number one is something I'm starting to believe, right? It was always out there as a possibility, but I think we could see a period of stagflation. And if, for folks that don't really know what that is, that essentially means little to no growth and high inflation, kind of almost the worst outcome for the Fed because they can't kind of move in that environment. And I think the Fed is really painting themselves into a corner. We have three critical numbers this week: CPI, retail sales, and consumer sentiment. I think we could know a lot more by Friday. So I wanted to bring up the topic of stagflation with you. What do you think? Is it possible? Am I missing it? And if we go there, how do we move? How do we react? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting. We haven't faced that in a long time. I think we're definitely looking at that. There are still headwinds with the pandemic, supply chains, labor issues, things like that. Unemployment bonus expired last week,
Mm-hmm.
but we're still not seeing a tremendous pace in jobs, new jobs. So that hasn't recovered yet. So yeah, it's really interesting. So we are, I think, potentially facing a low growth environment. I think a lot of people are still catching up and making up from the pandemic. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, the South just went through their surge. The Northeast, we're predicting, or it's being predicted that we're going to see a surge in COVID cases in the Northeast here, probably end of this month, first part of October as we get into the fall.
Mm-hmm.
So it hasn't really fully played out yet throughout the Northeast, which again would be New York and all that. I don't think we're going to see shutdowns again, but it definitely is playing havoc on the economy and on productivity and on gross output, which is, what stagflation is really all about. It's that producer price
Mm-hmm.
and, gross domestic product numbers.
Yeah, I mean, you just the future is certainly murkier, given all that's going on: supply chain issues, labor, rising inflation. But yeah, there's a chance that we're Q2. I think when I look at Q2, and again, I have a daily show called the Daily Financial News, and every day it seemed like I was reporting record earnings, right? Beat on the top line, beat on the bottom line. Not only beat by like a penny, but they beat by like 50 cents, a dollar. It was like 87% of companies beat expectations. And I think the second half is going to be very different. I think people are going to suffer revenue hits, meaning, individual companies, which will roll up to a GDP hit. But really, the other side of stagflation is I see increased commodities, shipping, storage, labor. I mean, companies are going to get squeezed. And if that's true, then we have this thing in the stock market called the price to earnings ratio, or PE. You got less E. Man, it could be a correction in the stock market. I mean, I can just see the dominoes falling.
Yeah. Yeah. I think inflation, real inflation at the consumer level is probably closer to 10 to 20% in some areas.
Wow. Yeah.
When you look at it, I mean, prices have flat gone up 20, 10, 20, 30% in some industries,
Yeah.
retail, restaurants, food, groceries, fuel, look at the price of fuel. We're hitting all-time highs again, or close to all-time highs with that.
Yeah.
Gasoline. And then unemployment, when you look at the real unemployment rate, I was talking to some friends last week, and, they feel like the real unemployment rate is probably more like 20, 25%.
Really? Wow. That high. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people that have exited the workforce, and a lot of people that just aren't looking for jobs. So,
True.
when you count that, and then the ones that don't get counted are, self-employed individuals, entrepreneurs that get
Yeah.
shut down and put out of business. They're not counted as unemployed.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole U3, U6 real employment, we've seen a without question hit in labor participation by women, right? I don't females. I don't think that is a question. A lot of them have chosen to take on the lion's share of watching the kids, basically. And there was a hope that schools would open and we could get that important part of our economy going again. But it seems like fits and starts. We're not out of this, and a lot of the stimulus is gone, right? You talked about unemployment. There wasn't a fourth check or whatever, I think it's going to be a very slow slog in the second half of the year. And don't forget, we're going to be going into a rising tax environment as well. And both
Yeah,
corporate
so
and
there's some
individual?
headwinds out there for the economy, and I think everybody kind of knows it. Everybody's expecting it. The markets, they don't have to do anything yet because the Fed is still just pumping it as full as they can pump it.
Hmm.
So until they start to pull back, taper in interest rates, you're not going to see any changes in the financial markets pretty much no matter what happens, because it's really kind of an interesting dichotomy, because the worse the economy gets, the more the Fed's going to intervene.
Hmm.
So it really can't get better because the Fed has to pull back, which is going to tank the economy. So it's kind of like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, and the Fed. If this is that's why this is going to be so interesting to watch the Fed, because the economy is not growing, but we could see. I mean, again, I'm calling the 70s, right? We could see years of inflation north of 5%.
Yeah, it'll be real interesting. So, a lot of what spurred earnings, number
Hmm.
one was the immediate shutdown. So people weren't going anywhere. They weren't going out to eat. They weren't going to the movies. They weren't going and taking trips. Everybody was home. So they had extra income. So what they do, they went and they spent it on
Hmm.
things that they needed for the house to be at home,
Yep.
stocked up on food, stocked up on supplies, bought, everybody was working on their yards. Everybody was buying home office stuff. So,
Yeah.
those types of things. And then clothing, people were buying the leisure wear at home,
Yeah.
pajamas and all that. So it's really interesting, the sectors. And then of course Zoom and all the online platforms, the stay at home trade, the lockdown trade. And now that we've opened back up, people are traveling throughout the country. International travel has not kicked back yet, so there's still a lot of areas that we got a boost for this summer and everything, but it's kind of how it is, right? Everybody's been locked up. We finally got released. So everybody is out just having a good time this summer. Now it's over. Reality is setting in. People are back to school. We've got holidays coming. We have tax season coming after that. So people are starting to think about these things again. We don't have stimulus checks. We don't have PPE. We don't have the emergency loans. See, a lot of people forget about that.
Hmm.
The IDL loans where people got pumped, what was it, up to $10,000? You don't even have to pay it back, just a
Yep.
grant.
Yep.
So a lot of that money was thrown at people throughout the economy that helped kind of spur a lot of that spending. And people were, putting money away into savings and things. So, that's a lot of what propped everything up, kind of pumped the economy up. The Fed did, 1,000-fold into the markets. So there's been a lot of money generated in the markets, a lot of profits there that's, helped kind of spur all that. So that stuff is starting to unwind now. You can't get yields in the markets like you were getting early
Hmm.
on. Even the retail Reddit trades are kind of dying down because there's really, not enough money out there to keep pumping it.
Hmm.
People have propped up GameStop and AMC, and their capital's tied up because they're not making any money on those trades.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, where that, where those limitations have now run out. And this week will be really interesting to see what those job numbers look like, because people are going to have to go back to work now because of that bonus. It doesn't make sense to stay home now.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that looks this week.
Yeah, the one thing that this number this week, Thursday, we always talk about unemployment claims. It had a record low print last week. I think the unemployment rate, which is the U3, which is often quoted, was 5.2. It really could go up, folks. If you don't know what the U3 is, the unemployment rate could actually go up this week, because one of the variables in U3 is you have to actively be looking, right? It's called participation. So maybe the last year or so, you've been just sitting at home on a couch, not looking. So you were not counted in U3. You were probably counted in U6. It'll be interesting now that some parts of the country, schools are opening up. If mom is starting to go look for work, that would actually be a good sign, I think, if unemployment went up. The unemployment rate went from like 5.3 to 5.6. It would mean we're bringing more power to the market, more labor to the market. But I just don't know. It's going to be a really important week, I think.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you've got the $3.5 trillion
Yeah.
infrastructure package. So now they're talking about tax hikes to pay for it, and the Democrats, right now are kind of outlining a plan for the Republicans to respond to.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, the plans call for top corporate and individual tax rates of 26.5%, 39.6% respectively.
Mm-hmm.
According to a summary released by the tax things, the proposals include 3% surcharge on individual income above 5 million and a capital gains tax of 25%.
Yeah.
So, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to trickle down from all of this that are going to really, again, put more, headwind into recovery. And the Fed's running out of bullets. They can only keep pumping so long because the money's not reaching the consumer anymore like
Yeah.
it was with
Yeah.
the EIDL loans.
Yeah, diminishing returns, right?
Mhm.
Right. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I'd have to research them. But basically, when the Fed starts doing QE, it has, every 100 million they pump out, it has, 200 million, and then they do another, 100 million. It's just diminishing returns. And now it seems like they're putting out hundreds of billions of dollars a month, and it's buying like 10 billion in work or whatever, or
Yeah.
return. It's just, yeah, you're right.
So there's some real
bullets are out.
headwinds out there, and this isn't a negative thing. This is just the
No.
reality of the situation we're in. And the question is, how do you make money? What's your trade? What are you doing? So if you're investing in markets, you really need to pay close attention to what's going on, because it's going to pull back. The question is, how far is it going to go? Is it going to be a 10, 15, 20% correction, which you absolutely need? The Dow's been just straight up record every day, every week. We had a little bit of a pullback last week. I don't think it had amounted to even 5%, really.
No, it was 5 negative days, but not. I don't.
Yeah, you really need 25, 30%. And there's a lot of people, Kathy Wood included, who's been the biggest bull, irresponsibly long, in every area you could be thinking of. Yeah. She's even calling for a serious pullback and correction and stagflation and things like that. So it's just not just you and me. This is some of the brightest minds out there see the writing on the wall, and it is what it is. So the real question is, how do you prepare? What do you need to do? And what's going to be the next trade? And again, for me, when you're in a bubble economy at the asset level in all classes are in a bubble right now. Crypto's come back a little bit, but it's still frothy. It's still at very high levels. The real estate record, stocks record, everything's as high as it can get. Cash is going to be your play at some point when things start to unwind, so that you can take advantage of the reset when it happens.
Yeah. So again, the whole idea, again, Jamie Dimon was the one that called this out. I think it was 6 months ago now. He's been sitting on what it was $500 billion. I'm sure it's $1 trillion now, or pretty close, because he's just going to wait. He's like, yeah, let inflation eat at the edges. I'm going to wait for the discount, right? Yeah, you might get me for 3, 4, 5%, but I'm going to buy at a 25% discount. And building cash reserves right now is a good idea. It's certainly what I'm doing.
Yeah, a lot of the smartest capital out there, that's what they're doing right now, is they're getting ready for the reset, where assets and markets reset across the world stage, because it has to happen. The ECB is already talking about. I think it's the ECB or
ECB started tapering already. Yeah.
Yeah, they're already tapering. So it's going to happen globally. We need deflation, at the asset level on a global scale, and it's going to happen. And you just need to be ready to respond and watch for the opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. There will be opportunities made. There always is. When I think Warren Buffett gets credit for when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked, something like that. So
he also says that financial markets are the most efficient markets in the world of transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient.
Oh, I did not know that. I'm going to look that quote up. Impatient to patient. I love Warren Buffett.
Transferring wealth, transferring money, capital, however you want to label it, from the impatient to the patient. So, I've heard my entire career that the dollar's trash. It's going, dollar's worthless, da, 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 da. And what does everybody want in times of, turmoil? Cash.
Dollars.
Absolutely. He who has the dollars makes the rules.
Very cool. This has been a great conversation. We'll go into some more detail in episode number 2. Greg, how can people follow you?
Yep. GregDickerson.com. All my contact info, YouTube channel, podcast is all there. And I get into all kinds of stuff: entrepreneurship, real estate, cryptos, markets, everything.
Yeah, folks, again, you need to be following Mr. Greg Dickerson. He covers lots of things that I don't, because I don't have the experience. He's a wealth of knowledge. You need to follow him. Go to his YouTube channel, Greg Dickerson, or GregDickerson.com. Thanks, buddy.
Yep.